So we'll give a little bit of background for our predictions heading into 2024. Obviously, we published the written documents for this a month or two ago, and things have definitely changed since then. So we'll touch on what we originally were looking at in terms of the year, as well as share some of the early updates as we're a month into the year. So we'll go through kind of the context and the role of AI overall, and then I'll hand it off to Katie to go through what we're seeing in terms of the infrastructure and platform as a service markets. And then Alex will close the session looking at, for the applications and software as a service space, some of the particular predictions and developments as it relates to AI. So feel free to reach out. Any questions, put them in the chat, both during the session as well as after. So in terms of setting context heading into the year, 2023 definitely saw a change in terms of the type of business model, the ability to grow cloud businesses, really unprecedented slowdown compared with the historical expansion rates, even through the COVID era. In some ways, it was even accelerated due to the shift to remote working and role of technology in terms of enabling some of those business model changes. So 2023 was definitely a slowdown. And so it's in that context that I think the developments around AI are really hold a lot of promise for vendors in terms of new ways to capture growth and certainly not get back up to some of the historical rates of expansion. But definitely it's a good supplement in a slower growth environment. And so that's not only impacting vendors and customers at the top line, but forcing a lot of changes in terms of the ways of doing business. So with the bottom line profitability being more important now than it really ever has been for these cloud providers, looking at ways to be more efficient, to leverage ecosystems and partners, and to really balance the investments that they're making in new technologies like AI with that bottom line perspective, with profit and efficiency more top of mind for them than it really ever has been. So that sets a little bit of the context. So over the last month, we've conducted research amongst the adopters of cloud solutions, published two reports, one on the infrastructure side and one on the application side, to understand it's an ongoing stream of research around the ways that cloud is being used within organizations, decision-making behavior, and perception of vendors, to kind of round out a lot of our research, which is vendor-focused. This goes directly to those folks actually making investments in cloud technology. And for the last two rounds of it, we've added in questions around GenAI to kind of get a status for how customers are using it. So this at the high level really speaks to, for nearly every organization, more than 90% are using GenAI to some degree within their organizations today. Not only that, if you look at both the internal and external customer-facing usage and use cases, nearly half have already implemented things that are not just pilot trials, are actually involved in the production running of different services and use cases. So that's quite significant, and obviously that's developed over a very short period of time, starting in 2023. So definitely not just a lot of interest, but actual use cases starting to be developed, tested, monitored within most enterprise organizations. Now, the other side of that, when we look at some of the ways that AI is being monetized by vendors, the different offerings, the different tiers, a lot of different models are out there. However, all of them are fairly expensive, significant uplift in terms of some of the investments that are required to use those. And so, predominant behavior for customers last year around IT was to control, minimize, reduce, look at ways to be more efficient or optimize their use of these services. All IT really, but cloud is, due to its nature, easier to scale down and control compared with some of the CapEx type IT investments. And so in that environment, it's, they're really asking a lot to invest in new services that require additional funding and balance that with the bottom line and the budgets that have been established. And so when we ask folks about where this money is coming from for their GenAI funding, it's not necessarily reducing existing services or cutting back in other areas of IT spend. For the majority, it is additional funding that's being put forth. I think with the expectation when we talk with folks about what they're looking for and how they're justifying those investments, part of it is just being done on faith to start, that they feel like they need to be doing something to capitalize on this and use it to their advantage. Certainly the pressure of peer organizations and competitors getting ahead in terms of the use of AI within their organizations is creating some sense of urgency to get started. But on the backside, we do think that there's going to be a lot of development around measuring, quantifying, what the actual value is that's created for this funding, and that will be an important part of the continued growth of AI, and not just kind of a one-term blip where they spin up a couple services, see some value, but it's not something that really moves the needle for them. By all accounts, I think there will be real quantifiable benefits from the AI services that are available and being rolled out. But the challenge is going to be kind of capturing that and being able to demonstrate. So I think you'll see a lot of development in that throughout the course of the year. So that's the kind of market background and overall what we're seeing in terms of the pace of investment in terms of GenAI services. I'll hand it over to Katie to go through a little bit from the vendor side, what we're seeing in terms of the hyperscalers.
Great. Thanks, Alan, and thank you everyone for taking the time to join us today. You just heard about the customer behavior around GenAI. So here we wanted to double click a bit on the vendor side, go through what we're seeing from the major hyperscalers in the market. So this graphic you see here, this is from our infrastructure and platforms benchmark. And it's really just designed to show where the hyperscalers have their footprints and where they're expanding across the three geos. So this is from 2Q23. It's not current. We've seen new openings since then. Our next iteration in April will have those updates along with the fresh data. Now, obviously, there's been a huge push to build capacity and make investments to support GenAI. So we pulled some vendor commentary here that has been given on the most recent investor calls, where really we're hearing that CapEx guidance is going to accelerate in 2024, in some cases significantly. Oracle may be a bit of a unique case here as they're really reasserting themselves in the infrastructure as a service market, and they are dealing with the challenge now of having more demand for OCI than they can currently supply. Amazon, similarly, that investment goes well beyond AWS, but we continue to see that be the primary focus. So regardless, we're just seeing a lot of investment here when you factor in the GPU market dynamics and the need to grow capacity and accommodate these workloads. A big part of this investment, too, we think we'll see more of a shift towards specialized computing. So that means edge computing, those dense metro-level facilities for low latency use cases, and then also an increase in sovereign cloud developments in Europe to really deliver those special data residency guardrails, those policies, like regions can only be accessed by EU resident employees, to try and meet that evolving regulatory and cultural landscape around data privacy and data ownership that we continue to see take shape in Europe. So on this next slide here, just wanted to take a step back and recap some of the big strategic developments that we saw in 2023 and we think will carry into 2024. There's been, of course, quite a few developments, but these ones we think have signaled more of a strategic shift for these vendors trying to play in a saturated market. So one of the more recent ones that really kicked off last year, but was more formally announced last month, was Google Cloud's decision to cut egress fees. So data egress has been something customers in the cloud industry have been grappling with for over a decade. And now we see Google Cloud formally coming out with this announcement, really in a push for more interoperability, taking aim at some of the legacy players on the market and their licensing practices. And that kind of ties into this next one here, which is the big shift we see going on at Oracle. So several quarters ago now, they launched their multi-cloud strategy. They made database services available outside OCI, really to try to retake share in the market, combat that pressure from some of the cloud native players. But their interconnection partnership with Microsoft Azure is actually really interesting. And that's been in the works for several years, I want to say since 2019. And strategically, it makes a ton of sense bringing together these two legacy powerhouses in database and applications, respectively, and giving customers that option really from a performance and a cost perspective to keep the right workloads where it makes sense through these interconnected cloud regions. And I believe there's 12 of them now, but with quite a few more in the pipeline, and really offering this model that doesn't offer an added cost burden for the transfer of data between OCI and Azure. And I know we've actually spoken to customers on the ground with this. They have big Oracle footprints, big Microsoft footprints. They've explored this option and said they were surprised it was possible, but it gives them a distributed cloud environment that can meet them from a cost and latency perspective. So we kind of see, Google's data egress announcement, they're taking aim at some legacy competitors here, but two of the big ones have this kind of partnership in place. And I think we'll continue to see that relationship evolve, where, they're essentially co-locating OCI and Azure data centers. This year, I think one of the things we'll continue to look out for is if Oracle makes any more announcements regarding partnerships that really fully integrate or interconnect with other entire clouds. And that could even be other SaaS providers, which may prove difficult given Oracle's a competitive player in quite a few SaaS markets. But we think, it's something to watch out for, especially for a company that's had a reputation for being pretty siloed, maybe less partner friendly, but that's shifting and they've really evolved OCI and made this multi-cloud push. So I think Oracle's push for interconnected clouds could be a good indicator of where we see the market going. And then on the right here, so a couple big developments to go through from the big two. So I mentioned sovereign clouds earlier. For AWS this past year, they finally addressed really quite a bit of criticism from the market. They were really called out for not having dedicated cloud region vendors, including Oracle, quite AWS. Suggests that AWS never had any sovereign capabilities. There's the encryption features, guardrails, and so on, but they actually came out and said they are launching a region in Germany. So we think it brings them on par with the other three a bit, offers that fully isolated region, and that's really a good step to building more trust with regulated announcement and anything unique or differentiated, rather a necessary step that they needed to take to satisfy existing customers and potentially stop them from exploring other clouds for their critical workloads. And then lastly here, we're getting more into the PaaS layer, but this development we think is really important, and that's Microsoft's launch of Fabric, which is now available. So they finally integrated these disparate data services, looking from Synapse up to Power BI, and it's all underpinned by a data lake architecture. So they're essentially isolating the compute layer from the storage layer and really laying the groundwork for Azure AI. Competitors, they're definitely also working to integrate their data services, automate pipelines, and really get customers ready for AI as the ultimate goal. But Microsoft's complete one lake architecture and all the trusted services that they have around it, we think will be competitive and help bridge that gap between the technical and the business personas in the organization. And the other important aspect of all this too is the simplified pricing model, where essentially customers are getting charged on the total infrastructure resources they consume versus each individual data service. And we hear so much in the market from customers and from partners just about consolidation and this push for platform first and simplicity. So I think those three things, Microsoft's getting to the heart of that with Fabric. And after the webinars, you get these slides. We've included a link here. We put out a piece on Microsoft Fabric. So we talk through the solution, but also some of the partner implications, the Databricks relationship, and impacts on other hyperscalers as well. So definitely feel free to give that a read after. And just to wrap up, I think, based on what we saw in 2023, I think data architecture, more specialized compute, and interconnected clouds, and within that, really how vendors try to overcome more co-opetition, and then the role of regulation impacting that as well. I think those are the three big things we'll be watching for and posting a lot more content on throughout the year. So definitely stay tuned with us around that. So with that, Alex, I'm going to hand it over to you to touch on GenAI and the enterprise SaaS market.
Great. Thank you, Katie, and hello, everybody. So as we look ahead into 2024 and looking at the enterprise SaaS market, something TBR talks a lot about is this idea that, the enterprise really is going to be waking up to a lot of these GenAI realities. As Alan discussed, there's a lot of interest and most customers are already evaluating this technology, but it's kind of looking at how do we get from where we are today to these mature AI strategies that kind of align with the productivity goals that a lot of companies are starting to think about. Unsurprisingly, when we speak with customers, security and data privacy are consistently at the top of all the buyers' lists of concerns. And this aligns very closely with survey results from our most recent customer research report. So looking at things like data governance, data sourcing, where data goes, what the data is used for, these are all really top of mind. And you really don't have to look much further than the copyright trials going on right now. Obviously, that is a little bit more vendor specific, and that's regarding more about training the models. But enterprises need to be, guaranteed that their data isn't being used in training models as well. And that's something that they want to be really over communicated. Lots of bans obviously around the more consumer oriented tools. And we see a lot of conversation from the vendors really establishing a trust layer. I think I'd always go back to Salesforce as a SaaS vendor that has really kind of led the charge in embedding GenAI into their existing workflows and offerings. And they always are marketing their Einstein GPT trust layer and really over communicating around this idea that, when you're working with GenAI tools on a Salesforce platform, that data is going nowhere. And really over communicating that, I think, is something that a lot of vendors should be doing more of, and as well as just overall alleviating some of the security concerns and data privacy concerns that many enterprises are feeling right now. As companies look to kind of overcome these barriers, I do think that SaaS is in a really good position to be a driver of early adoption. They control a lot of these existing workflows where GenAI tools, mostly talking about copilots and GenAI agents, which have already become generally available across the SaaS landscape. These are tools that can be adopted relatively quickly with out-of-the-box functionality. They're designed around the workflow. They've been designed with the expertise that these SaaS vendors have accrued over the decades of owning their segment. And that really affords them a really good opportunity to get out in front. I think another big advantage that a lot of these SaaS vendors have really done a good job of optimizing and flexing over the past year, building at the data platform. As Katie just talked about, Microsoft and Microsoft Fabric really was a great launch for them, and goes a long way towards unifying business data for the sake of Gen AI model ingestion. This is something that we've seen in multiple different places, and I'll skip to the next slide now. Salesforce with their data cloud obviously released before Gen AI was really on the front of everybody's mind, but those investments are really helping that company really get ahead in Gen AI development. One of the areas that I expect to be hearing a lot more of over 2024, this idea of multi-agent systems, meaning that having two Gen AI tools that are working in tandem to automate a specific workflow. The Salesforce example that I always think about is their automated prospecting capability. So in that example, you have a Gen AI tool that is capable of creating a recommended list of sales leads. And then with their Einstein GPT or their Sales GPT offering, they're able to take that generated list and create custom emails that use specific data from the recommended leads, and generate emails that can be sent out. And so you're kind of automating an entire workflow there that is pretty standard and a pretty big part of your business development workers' time, and opening them up to go towards more high value tasks. And I expect more of that. These are the sort of things that take more time to develop, right? So you get the co-pilot that's capable of generating the content, but each of these different tasks require tuning, and that is what will take time for the SaaS vendors over the next year. They have the expertise and they have the data to build these finely tuned out of the box capabilities. And they're going to continue to look at how they can stitch those together for the benefit of worker productivity and automating entire workflows. And like I said before, I think that having the data platform natively and integrated, and having that be available in the platform like a Salesforce data cloud is very important to setting up those multi-agent systems, and having the enterprise trust and over communicating around data so that customers are comfortable with all of their customer data being fed through these models. That is very important, and I think that's something that really sets a lot of the SaaS incumbents apart, because ultimately they're the ones that have the really strong reputation, the deep pockets to fund these platform developments. And I think over 2024, that position of strength is going to translate into a lot of great sales growth from generative AI, as you see more enterprises taking advantage of these out-of-the-box capabilities that the SaaS vendors are churning out. Obviously, as Alan mentioned, and you see in the middle column, a lot of the revenue uplift that is expected from some of these generative AI capabilities is quite high. And so it is something that I think could be quite impactful for the SaaS vendors. And I do think that there is some data starting to roll through that even though these packages might be priced to a pretty high premium, customers are already showing a willingness to pay that price. SAP just reported earnings, and one of the things that I noted from the earnings call is that 50% of new Rise with SAP customers are going for that premium package that includes business AI. And so I think AI and the inclusion of business AI is a big driver there. Obviously, in that case, there's a few other areas and a few other products that are included in that Premium Plus package, like sustainability and analytics. But with this interest and this demand around AI, I do think that this is something that is already showing to be a big driver of enterprise demand, a big driver for vendors growing customer wallet share. And I think that as more tools and more multi-agent systems start to come out, the value delivered through these new innovative products will really shine. And this will be something that drives multi-product and upselling opportunities for the SaaS vendors 2024 and beyond. So with that, I will close out and we can start looking at some of the questions that are queued in the inbox. So,
We'll take the first question.
Sure. The one that stuck out to me, what are GenAI vendors addressing security and sustainability? Like I said, there's a lot of communication around how data is being handled. Obviously, cybersecurity was and is and will be a concern for the enterprise customer, with or without GenAI. Like that has been at the top of our customer survey lists for many years. And I think that, a continued improvement and continue looking at incident response technology and teams and offering managed services around these tools is something that vendors have been doing and will continue to do. Obviously, you look at recent news with Microsoft and some of the breaches that have happened with some of their top executives. And clearly there are still gaps. And when we talk about, truly trusting these generative AI systems with our data, that's going to be a constant battle for the vendors. They're going to continue to come out with new stuff, but it's going to be one of those cat and mouse situations. And on the sustainability front, obviously, when we talk about generative AI, we're talking about a lot of high performance, data intensive workloads that are going to be, more energy intense than your more general compute. I think that a lot of these vendors, they have established decarbonization and sustainability goals. And I don't think that generative AI is necessarily going to be something that, assuages them from missing those targets. Whether or not they miss those targets obviously remains to be seen. But I think that looking at carbon offsets is going to continue to be the sort of thing that vendors like the hyperscalers and the major SaaS providers going to be their bread and butter in terms of communicating around sustainability. Obviously, there's renewable energy that can be used to power data centers and stuff like that. And that'll definitely be included in a lot of the marketing from these technology providers. And so I think it'll really come down to being how has the vendor been approaching sustainability historically? And I think that would be sort of my guide on how the vendor will be acting in the new generative AI landscape.
Okay, great. Let's see, there's another question that goes back to the slowdown in growth and the reasons behind for the cloud vendors themselves, the lower rates of growth. And I think it's a number of things. We've been expecting it for a couple of years, just given the size that a lot of these businesses have reached. It's more difficult to sustain the year-to-year percentage growth. So that's definitely part of it. But overall from customers, there's a saturation. Cloud can be a very significant portion of the overall IT budget. And so when there's cutbacks or, reductions to be made, part of it's going to come in those cloud services. So all the efforts around optimizing for cost and efficiency and paring back subscriptions, all that is, being reflected in some of the growth environment. So I think those two are the biggest, saturation in the market, and more focus on efficiency and cost optimization is what you're seeing. Okay, let's see. We'll take one more question. There's a question around the impact of, I suppose, everything we've talked about today on the IT services vendors. So my colleague Patrick can speak to more detail, but it's certainly covered this on a number of calls with clients recently. And so for internal delivery and operations, certainly AI is going to play a bigger role going forward in terms of generating content, looking at best practice, being more efficient with the staff that you have. So there will be, it'll be a tool that they use in their own operations. And then, in terms of the skills out in the market, these folks that are familiar with the technologies and the AI services and platforms are in short supply. And so being able to provide resources, oftentimes at a pretty significant premium. I know that there's certainly a different rate card for AI related projects compared with even cloud or general IT type environments. So it will be a driver of growth for them, as well as they look to work with enterprises on all the barriers, all of the use cases, all of the value in getting the right solution together to realize some of the much hyped benefits of AI within organizations. So it'll be a driver of growth for them to go out and deliver on that interest in expanded IT budgets to grow their own businesses as well.